We'll get to more phone calls coming up. Ed Werder covers the Cowboys, the senior NFL reporter. Let me start last week. The morale around the Cowboys after losing to the Commanders was what?
I think there was quite a bit of concern, Dan, especially about the terrible performance of Dak Prescott in that game. He was very inaccurate, threw another pick six, his third one in the past 4 games. So I think they were shaken by what happened. As much as they said, though, that they were going in to win the game because it did have some potential playoff value to them. If the Eagles had lost to the Giants, they would have won the division and had a home playoff game. I just don't think the players were that mentally into that game. And so it wasn't surprising that the intensity level last night was significantly higher.
What did you expect last night?
Well, I mean, I didn't know, to be honest with you. I mean, if you look at it, we're talking about a 12-win team and the Cowboys against an 8-win team in Tampa Bay. But it's Dallas, and they played bad, and the quarterback was horrific. And so I think everybody got so caught up in exaggerating the flaws of the Cowboys that we ignored the obvious failings of the Buccaneers, which took place throughout the whole season. I mean, I think what happened last night was the Cowboys played the way they have for most of the season, and the Bucs played the way they have for most of the season. We just weren't sure about the Cowboys.
Most important person on this Cowboys team moving forward? I guess let's remove Dak out of this since, being the quarterback, but the one player you think everything sort of centers around that as he goes, this team goes.
Micah Parsons had a phenomenal game as a second-year pass rusher last night. Talking to Dan Quinn during the week, one of the things they wanted to do with Tom Brady was they wanted to be less predictable on defense. And so they went back to using Micah Parsons in a way they really hadn't over the previous 2 months. They had pretty much just lined him up at defensive end and let him, rush the edge. They weren't using him as an off-the-ball linebacker and rushing him from various spots on the defense. Dan Quinn went back to that last night with the purpose in mind of making Brady make his reads after he got the ball in his hands and not determining where he was going pre-snap, sort of slowing him down and allowing the Cowboys pass rush more time to influence the game.
I didn't understand the philosophy for a large stretch of the season by using him on the edge. I as a quarterback, I would want to make sure I find him. If I know he's over here, okay, now I can plan accordingly. It's when I don't know where. I mean, the brilliance of Lawrence Taylor was I didn't know where he was. And he could line up in a variety of places. To me, that felt like, why would you move away from that philosophy to begin with?
Well, I think they kind of got trapped into putting him at defensive end just because they really didn't have opposite DeMarcus Lawrence another, consistent pass rusher. I mean, Dorrance Armstrong has had a really great season and justified the front office's decision to move on from Randy Gregory, although they did try to sign Randy Gregory, who walked away at the last minute. But I think they felt like they needed 3 great edge players to have a consistent rush throughout the game. And so I think that's why they got caught in that. I mean, he's obviously an incredible rusher with a lot of moves and unbelievable quickness. But overall, I think they came to the realization that the way that Micah Parsons can best affect the whole game is to play him at linebacker and then give him rushes off the edge. And so I don't know what the numbers turned out last night, but I know in week 1 when they played the Bucs, he had 2 sacks on Tom Brady, and he played like 40 snaps as an end, 21 snaps as a linebacker. And then over the 8 games going into last night, Dan, he only had like 19 total snaps at linebacker. I don't know what the numbers turned out to be last night, but I know Dan went into it wanting 15 to 20% of Micah Parsons snaps to be at linebacker.
Talking Ed Werder, covers the Cowboys for the mothership. I still love watching Tony Pollard. It just, I don't know if he's a single back or you do need to split up those carries with him, but he's just such a dynamic player. And then I wanted to fast forward this to how does Dallas, with what you saw last night, match up with what they're going to face with San Francisco?
Well, when I watched San Francisco last week and saw what Christian McCaffrey did on his first carry, I tweeted out, every time I watch Christian McCaffrey, I wonder why the Cowboys don't create the same kind of plays for Tony Pollard, because I think they are very similar players. A lot of people argue that Pollard's not tough enough, can't take the contact, but he led the NFL in yards rushing after first contact this year. Tony Pollard did. So he's a strong guy in addition to being fast and elusive. And they were really fortunate to have. I almost, when you asked me that question about who the most important Cowboy is other than Dak, I almost said Tony Pollard, because they wouldn't have been able to establish a running game last night without Tony Pollard's quickness. You saw what Ezekiel Elliott did in the game. Pollard is just such a unique player. Such a great space player, and yet he's proven he can be an every down type player. He's going to make a lot of money this offseason. As for how the Cowboys match up, I'd be worried about my kicking situation. Brett Maher became the first kicker in NFL history to miss 4-point after touchdown attempts. So every Dak Prescott touchdown revealed a weakness we weren't aware of that they were going to have, because according to Elias, Dan, and you worked at ESPN, so you know the value of our stats and information people. According to Elias, 16,207 games have been played in the NFL, and the stats compiled since 1932. And never in all that time, in all those games, has any kicker missed 4 extra points in the same game, much less in succession in a playoff game. So I think that's a big thing. And I think the other big thing for the Cowboys is, are they going to be able to tackle well enough? I didn't like what I saw for the first time last night from Trayvon Diggs as a corner. He really improved his tackling and his willingness to do so this season. I don't think he was great last night in that regard. I think Leighton Vander Esch was big coming back. But, I mean, George Kittle, if it's not Travis Kelce, then he's the best tight end in football after the catch. Christian McCaffrey is an unbelievable player in every role. He's going to get a lot of yards after the catch. And then Deebo Samuel is the best receiver in football after the catch. Showed that again last week and reminded the Cowboys in their playoff exit last year to the 49ers in the first round just how devastating a player he can be.
You walk into the locker room and everybody's probably excited, great game, and then you walk up to Brett Maher. Now, I think he missed his last extra point the previous week, so that's 5 in a row, Ed. So the Cowboys make him available at his locker for you to talk to him?
Yeah, he did. He did make himself available. I don't know if the team recommended it or whatever, but yes, he did briefly answer, questions. What's unfathomable about it is how good he's been all year. He was 50 for 52 kicking extra points until he went to Washington and missed, and then 4 misses last night. So wow. 5 misses in a row. Where did this come from? And more to the point, how do they fix it? I mean, they're on a short week going to San Francisco. It's not going to be easy to kick in San Francisco. And I don't care what Brett Maher does this week, how many extra points he makes in practice. They're not going to know until they send him out there, probably hoping it's for a point after kick and not an important field goal for the first time. They're not going to know if they have a kicker or not.
You know that this game is going to come down to something with Brett Maher, right? It just feels like
that's the NFL, right?
I know that the line is 3.5. Cowboys getting 3.5. It just feels like there's some scenario where you're going to go, oh my God, how good is this? Or I feel bad for this poor guy. Because, you go into that locker room and you're like, there's one guy who had a bad night, a horrible night. There's no chance that they cut him, correct?
I just don't think they have time.
Okay.
I asked Mike McCarthy that last night if there would be kicking tryouts, and he basically completely eliminated the possibility just because there aren't a lot of kickers available and they don't have any time. I mean, they're on a plane in 3 days going out to San Francisco to play that game out there. And the 49ers obviously played on Saturday, so they've got extra time to prepare for the game. I just don't think there is any opportunity to bring in another kicker. And so, the players call him Money Maher. And he wasn't that last night. And I asked Dak, because we saw Dak slam his helmet in frustration after, I think, the 3rd miss. And he's like, why the blank aren't we going for 2, And I think they had enough command of the game and a substantial enough lead that McCarthy kept sending him out there because he was trying to work him through this in the game so they didn't have to deal with it this week. And they could go to San Francisco feeling like they had a kicker that they could trust. But they're not going to have a kicker that they can trust. And, on that 4th down gamble, I was watching Maher after 3 misses. He starts to go out to kick the field goal, and McCarthy's like, we're going for this. Yeah.
I'm going to leave you with this, a hypothetical. If the score was reversed last night,
what would the Cowboys have done with Mike McCarthy?
Yeah. What would we be talking about today?
Well, I know what we'd be talking about. We'd be talking about, is Dak Prescott a franchise quarterback? And we'd be asking, is Mike McCarthy going to be fired after back-to-back 12-win seasons? And you know what? As ridiculous as that sounds, every place else in the NFL, you can't discount the possibility of it because Jerry Jones moved on from Jimmy Johnson after he won back-to-back Super Bowls. So firing somebody after 12-win seasons is nothing when you're firing a coach who left after, back-to-back Super Bowls. But so I think it was an important game last night for Dak Prescott. I think Dak knew it going in. He as much as admitted during the week to us that, this is unlike any other game I've ever played in my 7 years in the NFL. And certainly it was important for Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott to create some playoff credibility with this team.
I know you're busy. Thanks for joining us. Safe travels.
Thanks for shaming me into it.
I did. Ed goes, I'm really busy, Fritzy. I can't do it. Fritzy sent me the correspondence. So I text Ed before the game. I go, soft. And then he goes, okay, I'll do it. Okay, I'll do it. And I went, I felt bad. Because Fritzy was so excited. He goes, I just heard from Ed Werder. He's going to do it, win or lose. And I go, okay. Fritzy, I called him soft.
First of all, you only wanted to do it if the Cowboys lost, right?
Yeah.
That way, yeah. You only wanted to do it.
I'm happy to see you. I'm happy to see you no matter what.
And I'm honored to be your friend and be invited on your show. Thanks,
I didn't say friend. I just said happy to see you, Ed.
My mistake.
Soft. Thank you. Thank you, bud. Actually, not soft. Ed Werder, busy man. Not soft.